not looking at the chat today with a whole bunch of exclamation points and a 1 for style and a bunch more exclamation points. All right. So now that we've got that out of the way, so yeah, this is a grad school vlog. I've done a few of them. Some people like to hear about this stuff. It's nearing the end of the semester. It's been a really strange semester given that, we're in a world pandemic. So there's that. A lot of my assignments got changed, but the penultimate assignment for the group that I'm in right now, the real grade swaying assignment, the one that was weighted the most, it was that I had to propose in a 10-page essay a group that should be conducted for a therapy group. And I chose to propose that new atheists might need therapy. And I know that shit'll fly real swell with the viewership that I have, because a bunch of you are here from that time when I used to talk about being an atheist all the time. But I thought I would just go over some of the larger points of my paper today, just to give you guys that grad school experience that I'm getting, just a little peek into that. So I proposed this group for members of the secular community who've lost a sense of belonging to their family and their community as non-religious people in a dominantly religious society, right? I'm addressing the fact that they are right now a minority in my country. So this population would benefit from counseling to help establish a sense of belonging with other people who are like-minded, help them deal with trauma stemming from the loss of their family or community, in case they're shunned by their community, if their family doesn't want them anymore. This is a group that might be able to help a lot of people through some hard times, and help them integrate into an existing nurturing community. And the local community that I am talking about is the one centered around the Denver Secular Hub. Since its inception, the first inaugural speech that was there, I put on my YouTube channel, and I have been a regular donor to them, like $5 a month for however long it's been. And I have sent quite a few people to the Secular Hub, to Freethinkers in AA, as a referral, because it's one of the only support groups for alcoholics that won't proselytize to you or have a prayer at the end. So yeah, I've been supporting them for a long time. I don't go to those support groups because I might see one of my clients there, because I pimp that place a lot. Because I run into a lot of atheists who have trouble with substance issues, maybe stemming from all of the discrimination that they face, and the shunning from their family and shit like that causes issues, right? So The problem that I wanted to address with my group in how atheists are becoming active in the secular community is that often they lack the initial vocabulary that would help them integrate into existing communities. Um, it's the transition period from being not, being religious, um, to being not religious. It's often kind of fraught with anger towards a former community that you were a member of. And it's kind of like when Yoda was going on about fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred. When you see uh, new atheists, often they're very angry. There's this anti-theistic phase that a lot of people go through. And it's usually the first 2 or 3 years that they're active in the community that uh, they really connect with the more energetic anti-theistic approaches that you might see on YouTube. The Ponage, the Christopher Hitchens, the all of that, the the spectacles of performance art. Um, and maybe this is rooted in like a feeling of disillusionment or a feeling that they were lied to, but it can also come from the prejudice that they receive from their community for not wanting to be religious. So um, I think it was a good thing for me to propose that this sort of group be enacted where um, basically it's like an atheism 101 support group where half of it is psychoeducational, where you just get the basics. Then the other half is, of each session would be just listening and saying like, what are your particular flavor of concerns? Because not everybody goes through this the same way. You know, so I think it was a good proposal. Um, in researching all of this, I found that there are many, many studies being done on atheism, uh, increasingly so, um, as an acceptable topic for studies in psychology. So that's awesome. Um, the amount of people who they describe as atheist, it varies still to where like now it can be even a third of the people in America. But then they want to break it down into like different subsections of nons and nuns and uh, you know people who are out atheists, people who are like just not wanting to go to church, but they're hedging their bets. They got all these different kinds of people that they want to break it down into, almost like all the different denominations of Christianity, you know, which they are a lot different from each other. So I understand that, but it just seems like when it was under 10%, you could just lump them all together in one group. But now that it's bigger than 10%, oh, now we got to break it up because it looks a little too big. Um, so yeah, one of the studies I looked at, it was uh, a study by Ethan Saker from the University of Iowa called "Therapy with the Non-Religious: Ethical and Clinical Considerations," and in it, he even estimated that it was like 33% of adults under the age of 30 identify as non-religious. You know, put the label of atheist on that, and they're all like, "Oh shit, can't be calling myself that." But put non-religious on it, then it's like, oh, that's not that bad of a label. You know, there's inherent bias in these studies as far as what label you throw out there for people to sign up for. You're going to get different results. Um, so yeah, I did an exhaustive literature review. Um, that wasn't the funniest title for a study that I saw. The funniest one was, "Isn't atheism a white thing?" That was the title of the study, centering the voices of atheists of color. Um, so yeah, and then there was "It's like herding cats." Lovely, lovely titles to studies. So yeah, that's still happening. Studies are trying to give themselves like the craziest sounding name just to get people to click on them. Clickbait has very much infected academia and might have been going on before we even called it clickbait. Just interesting sounding titles. So yeah, the group that I proposed, I said we should limit it to about 5 people. One reason for that was the foyer area of the Secular Hub, if you're ever in Denver, has some rooms off to the side that are kind of like conference rooms, and they're kind of tiny for you know for what they are. So those two little office rooms, I wouldn't put more than like 6 people in there, and since I'd be one of the 6, 5 group members. Um, Now, if it were like more than an hour, if it were 2 hours long, I might say, okay, a 10-member group would be okay. But the other thing that I think should limit the size of a group like this is when people are trying to tell you their feelings about what they've gone through. If they're atheists, they might have a lot of backstory to give context to what they're saying. So you might have to sit through very long stories, and if you can't have everyone sharing, equally, then I'd hate to have somebody feeling like they didn't get enough time to share. So 5 people in the group for an hour. I'll put that as like the upper limit. If it's a 2 hour group, 10 people. You know, probably a better group if it was 2 hours and 10 people than 1 hour and 5. You get a little bit better sharing. You know. By the way, that's Elvira that I painted right there on an. It was supposed to be orange like a pumpkin. You know, and instead of like actually carving a pumpkin and wasting food, I just painted a canvas and put out Elvira. That's a little bit off topic, isn't it? Might have been my first crush. I remember her for being really well endowed. Um, so yeah, I think another advantage of doing this as far as like making it a group therapy session is people would get this sense of universality where they're not the only one who's going through this kind of shit. They're not the only one that's seeing that the emperor has no clothes. They're not the only one that has to deal with discrimination. So, yeah, that's, I think, the biggest strength of this being a group therapy. I don't know that I'd ever actually do this, but for a grade, uh, and pressed for a subject to consider, I went ahead and went with what I knew, you know. Um, so yeah, I think the first session for that should be like terminology, the difference between an atheist and a theist, because like if you've never been around other atheists, you don't even know what a theist is, right? That's a word that only like people in this debate between atheists and theists know, and I could go without hearing either of those words for a very long time and feel very happy about it at this point. But uh, I think I'd establish some group rules also, like no shaming each other, but also no proselytizing. Like, can you imagine like setting up a group for people who are newly deconverting and then someone who's got one of those conversion boners where like they've never talked anyone into believing in their God, and that's the one thing they got to do before they die is like bring one person to God. You know, where are they going to go? They're going to go to a group for newly deconverted people to try to get them back into the fold, right? So I'd have to have a rule of no proselytizing. Now, if you're going to have a therapy group for people who might be still questioning and whatnot because they're new, then you can't really screen for people who are still feeling a little religious, you know. So um, the line in the sand would have to be if you started shaming someone or were proselytizing to them and trying to get them to go back to a church with you. So um, yeah, I also think that this kind of a group would be important because when you say these anti-theistic or bigoted things against uh, people who still have religions, it really distances you from the community members who've already learned to live and let live. You know, the ones who already feel like those aren't people to be uh, harangued. Those are possibly future logically thinking people. Why are you fucking with them like that? You know. So it's going to keep you from being able to enjoy all sorts of communities if you have all that bigotry within you, that hatred within you. So I think a group that just addressed that and showed that there's a whole community that doesn't have to do that. You know, we just rest on our laurels and say, you know what, eventually, you know, they'll come around. We don't have to shame them. You know, it's I think it's good role modeling. You know, instead of starting wars all the time, we could just, you know, annoyingly send love. um, I think it would also be a good group to show people like social supports that are for the secular community. You know, I know when I found the atheist community on YouTube, which predates this channel by about 3 or 4 years, um, I was blown away that there was that many of them because throughout my life I hadn't met many, you know. And now I know of many different things I can refer people to where they would be connected to supports in the community that won't make them pray at the end, you know, that won't try to get them to go to their church. So um, that's an important thing to be able to give someone is like, oh, you have this issue, okay, go here. They're not gonna, you know, try to guilt you into going to their church afterward. Um, but I also think it's not a place to go over like someone's complete spiritual history, you know, like their whole life story, because there's so much like pain that can come out of that. You know, you could re-traumatize someone. So I might end up having to refer them to regular therapy or worse, crisis intervention for some of the pain that people can whip up with their emotional stories about their lives regarding leaving religion. So, um, anyways, uh, it was a very draining day going over my proposal, you know, with a fine tooth comb. And I finally, like 15 minutes before it was due, I was like, I give up. It's not going to get any better, even with another reading that would take this 10 minutes. It's done. I'm not getting any better of a grade. And thankfully, in that group or in that class, uh, I've aced everything before it. So even if I got a B or even a C, I'd still end up with an A for the class. So we'll see where the chips fall. Got one more group, or sorry, one more class to close out. That's diagnosis and psychopathology. One more final project before my little break between semesters of 1 week before I have to go right back into it and start a summer semester. So, yeah, my nice little summer break is coming. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. Take care.